Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing It Came From The Network. The topic of this It Came From The Network, WrestleMania VIII. Now if you followed along, I've been covering some WrestleManias, basically because we're in WrestleMania season here. This is my last one before WrestleMania officially happens. At the time of this recording, it's going to happen over the weekend. So with all that being said, let's jump right into this. If you haven't seen any of my videos before, I grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 is the worst, 5 is the best. We start off with the national anthem being sang by Reba McEntire. This is a little bit different. The previous shows that we've seen him use America the Beautiful, which I think McMahon prefers, so maybe this was a Reba thing. Maybe Reba insisted on it being the national anthem, which, how are you going to argue? Reba McEntire is one of the great country singers of all time. I will say, this did take over my favorite from these couple. As before this, the Boyz II Men, America the Beautiful was my favorite. Reba McEntire's anthem, I think, is better than their rendition, and I love Boyz II Men, don't get me wrong. I just really enjoyed this. This was a great national anthem. Now we go right into our first match of the card. Shawn Michaels with Sensational Sherry going up against Tito Santana. The one thing I will say about this card before we really get into it is all the way up and down the card you have legends all over the place. Tito Santana, Shawn Michaels, Sherry Martel here. I mean, this is a star-studded card. This was a good match to start the show. There's a couple things that I would like better. I would like to see it being given a little more time. Ultimately, Shawn Michaels picks up the win here, which I think was a right decision. Shawn was an up-and-comer. Tito Santana was towards the end of his run. I'm giving this one a 3. I thought it was good. I wish it would have been a little bit longer and maybe a little bit more between the two. Going from that, we get a promo. Out in the crowd, we have Mean Gene Okerlund, who announces the Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal, and they bring out Paul Ellery. This was Paul Ellering's debut in the company. The Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, I'm just going to flat out say it, they kind of had a disappointing run in the WWF, and they were bringing in Ellery to kind of rejuvenate that, recharge it. This is an absolutely fantastic promo. Unfortunately, I don't think they lasted much longer with him there. Again, I just don't think the WWF ever fully understood how to push the Legion of Doom, push the Road Warriors, and don't get me wrong, they probably sold more toys and t-shirts and posters than anyone not named Hulk Hogan in the company. It just felt company-wise, they weren't taken as the big stars that they should be. And probably a lot of that is the fact that Vince McMahon isn't a huge fan of tag team wrestling. Now going from one of the legendary tag teams of all time to two of the legendary wrestlers of all time, we get The Undertaker versus Jake the Snake Roberts. And Undertaker has Paul Bearer with him. I went into this match with very high hopes and wanting to like it a lot more than I did. To me, and I know this was at the era where Undertaker was basically a zombie that just kind of walked around, but I also think Jake Roberts phoned this match in a bit. I believe this was Jake's last match in the company for at least a few years, and you could see he's not giving it the effort he normally would. You could see he's being lackadaisical. I don't know where he is as far as his struggles with addictions are, so that may be part of it. And I don't want to knock Jake, because Jake is one of the absolute legends in wrestling. To me, this was just kind of a ho-hum match. Undertaker does pick up the win here. I'm giving it a 3. Next up, we have my favorite match of the card, and probably one of my favorite WrestleMania matches of all time. For the Intercontinental Championship, Roddy Piper defending against Bret the Hitman Hart. They start off with a backstage interview where they're together. Gets a little bit contentious. At the time, Piper was saying he was Bret's cousin, which I've heard him say off and on, and I don't know if it's kayfabe or not, or maybe there's a marriage or something in there. I'm sure there's something. But I really enjoyed this match. This, much like the Santana and Michaels and even Undertaker and Jake Roberts matches, was the current generation Piper, Santana, Roberts, helping to put over the next generation, Bret Hart, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels. If you think about that, think of those three guys and how they would be integral to the company over the next decade after this. I mean, from WrestleMania 8 to WrestleMania 18, those three guys probably had more WrestleMania main events than any other three guys in any 10-year period you could think of, other than maybe like Hulk Hogan. We got three of the absolute legends of wrestling, and this is early on in their pushes. Ultimately, Bret Hart picks up the win here. Like I said, this is my favorite match on the card. I'm giving this one a 5. life. Next up, we get an interview from his home with Lex Luger saying he's going to be joining the World Bodybuilding Federation. This was a way around a contract that he had. I think he had a 1-year no-complete clause where he couldn't be on a wrestling show if he left Jim Crockett. And their way around it was to do this match, or do this promo and do the World Bodybuilding Federation stuff, hopefully bringing his star power there. It's actually a really good Luger promo. A lot of people don't like Luger's promos. I think when he's given time and it's more of a behind the scenes, not in front of the crowd setting, his nerves don't get him as much. He can be really good when he wants to be. Next up, we have a match which would be the equivalent of the Battle Royals that we've seen at WrestleManias, where basically they throw a bunch of guys in one match to get them all a paycheck. We got the Big Boss Man, Virgil, Sergeant Slaughter, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan going up against the Mountie, Repo Man, and Knobs and Sags, the Nasty Boys. Kind of funny seeing Slaughter here, just a year removed from him being the Iraqi sympathizer and being in the main event of WrestleMania, being basically what's a throwaway match here. For what it was good, but nothing great. I'm giving it a 3. The team of Boss Man, Virgil, Slaughter, and Duggan pick up the win here. Again, it was good for what it was. I know why it's there. You know why it's there. It's to give 8 guys a paycheck. Next up, we have for the WWF Championship, the Macho Man Randy Savage going up against Ric Flair. Flair has Perfect with him, Mr. Perfect. Macho Man has Liz, but she doesn't come out till halfway through. The build-up, Ric Flair was saying that Liz was his before she was Macho Man's, and he was threatening to release pictures of them together. This is kind of interesting. There's a couple things, and I'm going to talk about this more at the end. The one thing I look at WrestleMania 8 as good as some of the talent is on here, and as good as some of these matches are, and I'm going to get to this match here in a moment, but I'm going off on a little tangent. To me, WrestleMania 8 is the biggest missed opportunity WrestleMania of all time. As good as this match is, Flair and Savage, the match that every wrestling fan across the world wanted to see was Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan. And I know supposedly it didn't get that great of reviews at the house shows, but don't give me that bull crap. Just a couple years later when they did this in WCW, more fans tuned into it than had tuned in years. This was Ric Flair as close to his prime as he was going to be, and Hulk Hogan as close to his prime as he was going to be. And you could have had what would have been one of the biggest matches of all time at WrestleMania, and you missed that opportunity. Back to the match itself. I'm not ever going to complain about a Randy Savage and Ric Flair match. I think they put on a fantastic match. It's my second favorite match of the card. I just wish for storyline purposes they went the other route. This match was really good. I really enjoyed the psychology of it. I liked how they worked everything in, the story being told. Which again, what if they did this with Hogan and made it more important for Flair? Just my opinion. Ultimately, Savage picks up the win here. I'm giving this a 5. Like I said, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I just wish they would have went a different route. And maybe the match wouldn't have been as good, but we would have got to see the match. Next up, we have Tatanka versus Rick Martel, continuing on the storylines of guys that have been there for a while, putting over younger guys that are coming in for the next generation. Tatanka was definitely looked at as such. This is a rather quick match. Tatanka picks up the win. It was a little clunky for me, and following up after Flair and Savage, I don't think they should have put this here. I'm giving this one a 2. Next up, we have the Natural Disasters going up against Money Incorporated. The Natural Disasters are Earthquake and Typhoon. Typhoon is also the Shockmaster, going up against Ted DiBiase and Erwin R. Shyster. Jimmy Hart had recently turned on the Natural Disasters, making them faces for a short run here. This was a match, I don't understand why it was here. No one looked any better coming out of this. Ultimately, the Natural Disasters win by a countout on a WrestleMania. I mean, come on, this was a nothing match in my opinion. As much as I wanted to like this more, I love the Natural Disasters as a team. I think they're highly underrated. I'm giving this match a 2. Just because the way it ended with the countout, they didn't really get their comeuppance. I mean, it is what it is. Next up, we get a promo with Brutus and Barbara Beefcake, basically sucking up to Hulk Hogan. And I left it out, before most of these matches, the guys got promos for their matches. I'm putting that all as part of the matches. This was one of the few that was separate. That's why I'm separating it here. Next up, we get Owen Hart versus Skinner, and this is the Rocket era Owen Hart. Again, this match would have more fit on their Saturday show or even Saturday night's main event. For it to be the second to last match on the card, it really was a head scratcher. This could have easily switched places with like Bret versus Piper or Undertaker versus Jake, or even like Savage and Flair maybe being here as part of the dual main event that it was supposed to be. It's a really quick match. Owen Hart picks up the win here. Not a great match in my opinion. I'm giving this one a 2 as well. Last but not least, we get the main event that we were given. The one that I think that most people will say is a little bit of a disappointment. Hulk Hogan versus Sid Justice. I like Sid. I'm a huge fan of Sid. Anybody that's known me since this time period will tell you I've liked Sid since the first time I've seen him. Sid was not good here. And this is probably my least favorite Hulk Hogan WrestleMania match. There was something off about this, whether it be Sid Justice felt like he should have picked up the win here, whether it be the finish, which everybody knows is off. Just the match itself was boring. It was very plotting, even more so than like Hogan and Andre. The thing that Hogan and Andre had that this didn't was a spectacle. Ultimately, we come down to the end. There's a botch of the finish. Papa Shango misses his cue. He comes out late, which brings out the Ultimate Warrior as well. Sid gets disqualified. Hulk Hogan wins by disqualification. Ultimately, I'm giving that one a 2. Now, like I said, overall, there were a lot of ups and downs. The Bret Hart, Roddy Piper match, one of my favorite matches in WrestleMania history. Savage and Flair was an awesome match if you take it and put them in a vacuum. Overall, though, I think it was a very underwhelming card. I'm going to give the card a 2. The lows, especially that last half of the card, really drug it down to their level, and it makes you forget the good. This will always and forever to me be the missed opportunity WrestleMania. It should have been Hogan and Flair. No one could ever tell me that it shouldn't have been, that wasn't the right idea, especially after seeing the match that we were given and seeing what happened. I mean, where did Sid go after this? He wasn't there that much longer. To me, again, just a very big disappointment. One of the real bad WrestleMania main events, in my opinion. One of the real bad WrestleMania shows altogether. Again, I'm giving it a 2. Well, that being said, let's smash that like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't, and if you made it all the way to the end, let me know a WrestleMania match that you think should have happened and never did, whether it be Hogan and Flair here, or a different match somewhere in time. Could have been Austin and CM Punk that was tossed around for a few years. Anything. Anywhere down the line. Maybe they should have had Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels on this card. Maybe a match with Jerry the King Lawler at WrestleMania that wasn't against Michael Cole. Let me know what you think. Hit me down here in the comments. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and it's been another It Came From the Network.